Hello everyone, I'm Jerne from crowdfounderbootcamp.com, and today we're interviewing Ryan Fitzgibbon, and he will be mentioning, or he will be talking about his Kickstarter campaign that he did 2 years ago. It's a smaller project, but very interesting because he's touching the personal aspect. There was not a physical product. There was actually, in his case, there was a magazine touching an identity of men who date men, and how that identity could be redefined and questioned again in our society, I guess. So Ryan, could you please introduce yourself to our viewers and just talk a little bit about your crowdfunding experience?
Sure. So I'm Ryan, and I live in Brooklyn, New York, and 2 years ago now is when I just launched the Kickstarter campaign for Hello Mr. Magazine, which is the magazine that I now run, and I launched it with the goal of $20,000 to raise, which pretty much just covered the production and all of the costs of printing and getting it started. And we raised about 26,000, so we got just over 6,000 more than what our goal was, what we expected. And it's now the magazine was successfully funded, obviously, and we came out with the first issue maybe 4 months after the Kickstarter, and now we're on the fourth issue. Almost 2 years later, so
it goes out twice a year, I think.
Right, it's a biannual magazine.
Can we maybe start with outlining how it went from the conception of idea of this magazine, and then really how much time it took to put it out there on Kickstarter, and how it ended up with your first fulfillment orders, and how did you manage the technical part, distributing it to your customers?
Right. So the concept was created maybe 3 years ago. So obviously a bit before, because I had to sort of set up the branding. But I really wanted to create something that didn't exist, specifically in magazines for gay men. And so my background comes from graphic design and print, not so much in journalism, but I started to surround myself with people who were writers and illustrators and photographers who also felt the same way about creating something sort of fresh and evolved for this community. And so I actually started as a blog, and thought it would just kind of be something I could test out on a free platform using Tumblr, and realized that I wanted to do more of it, and I wanted to maybe turn it into my full-time job. So I needed to make money, and wanted to not just make money through print sales, but also create a physical object that people could keep on their coffee table and could, really cherish and feel that there was a lot of effort and care put into it. And so, that's how I started to determine that it was going to be print, and then sort of source the right materials and resources for printing it, and found a friend I met someone who became a friend who publishes his own magazine in Australia, and he connected me to a great number of resources, and the one I ended up using for my printing and distribution, which is in Berlin.
Wow.
Yeah, so kind of all over the place. But so it's still printed in Berlin, and we work with a fulfillment center there to send the copies to all of our readers and to all of our bookstores. So it's a good setup and a good working relationship that I've stuck with for the last year and a half.
Beautiful. Yeah. How much of the system you actually had in place before actually launching your Kickstarter campaign? So you were mentioning, finding the resources, the right contacts. So how much actually did you have already in place before launching the campaign? Because
Right,
it's like you are not sure if it's going to be supported or funded fully. So I guess you cannot invest a lot of money or promises to people
right.
around. So how much did you have while you were launching, and then how did it turn out? So when you found out that was actually funded, yeah, how much change was there? But no, really, I want to focus like how much did you have already before launching?
Yeah. So had a pretty, I obviously had a pretty solid brand guideline and sort of strategy. I didn't have content. I had maybe some ideas for stories and for things that would make the brand and the magazine more complete. But what I had mostly was the um, brand video to sort of tell the story
Mm-hmm.
of what it was and the mission statement, the brand attributes, and some key visuals that represented what it could be before I invested, like you said, into anything. But also what I had was the trademark. So the name Hello Mister was something I felt really strongly about, and before I put it out there to the world in too many with too much, and especially like a platform like Kickstarter, which has so much attention,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure that I owned that name, or I had some stake in the claim of owning it. So I had most of that was established before launching. So those are most of the key things. But I think more uniquely to what I was doing, as opposed to developing a product or something that was maybe more um,
Yeah.
that needed more of a prototype. I wanted to create a campaign on Kickstarter that not just raised money, but that raised questions and raised
Awareness.
feedback and yeah, awareness, so that I could learn and meet contributors writers and photographers who wanted to be a part of it. So
Wow.
it was more that I just created the kind of skeleton for what it could be, and then throughout the Kickstarter, people added some of the flesh and bone onto the bones.
Perfect. Yeah, I guess like crowdfunding was so organic way to go with
Yeah,
your project.
yeah,
So probably you were not thinking about other kind of investments or
right.
angel investments or whatever. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, not at that
Yeah,
point.
and
Yeah,
I really like it because crowdfunding in your case really not only gave funding but really almost everything else like content, people starting to question, starting to join in,
right,
starting to like the body was created while this campaign was actually alive. So it's
right,
beautiful,
right.
beautiful. Can I ask what was the total cost of running your campaign? For example, in your
Well,
case, how much it cost you to get things ready before launching? And I guess the video was something that it took a lot of kind of effort, and technically it looks really well done. So that was, I guess, a cost.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. I It's a good question to think about how much was actually put into it, because it spans over such a time, that all of these things were happening over a long period of time. But I would probably say, I met a friend who was willing to help with the video, and paid them about $1,000 to make that happen, um, and then put some money into owning the URL and the trademark, like I said. So I mean, I probably spent close to $5,000 or $6,000,
Hmm.
if not more, just on preparing everything to launch the Kickstarter, and then obviously all the rewards that come along with those campaigns. You have to invest into. So I had to make the tote bags and make cards and some socks and various things. So if I included those, it's probably up
Up to 10.
over 10
Over 10.
10,000, and then you obviously make that money back, but it's already a huge investment kind of
Yeah.
before you get started. So there's that's something I think a lot of people don't think about is how much has to be go into it before you start making any money, and then once
Campaigning.
you
Yeah.
yeah, and then even after the campaign, it's it still takes a couple of weeks to hit the bank. So
Um, can we touch still some technical aspects of your video, like who wrote the script, who was finding the team, who was putting the technical team together? Like, was that really challenging, or just like you did it with this friend who knew how to do stuff and had his own contacts? I find it kind of hard for more kind of product teams to really understand how much it actually goes into the video, not only technically, but like how difficult it is really to have a really nice way to tell the story about your product.
right,
So
yeah,
just yeah, how did this happen? It feels to me it went very like organic, but not for many people, and especially if you need to explain a product, it's kind of more challenging, I guess.
yeah. I think that's true. I think there's a couple different ways that people produce their videos, and more often than not, it's kind of showing you a prototype or an idea, um, and how it will come together. But I really wanted to show a more emotional response to how um, sort of if we look outside of what the product is, like what's the type of person that's going to be funding it and that's going to be behind it, um, and who's our target and what do they care about and what's the world that they live in. So that did make it more challenging because um, you kind of had to think more strategically about that. And so I wrote the script.
Wow.
That was me sort of putting together kind of the evolution of my mission statement into something a little bit more concise and poetic, I guess. And then the videographer I worked with was great because he did have a lot of connections and finding right spaces for us to shoot in. And then I think I probably used Instagram or Twitter to find people to be in the video, and they were excited about it. So it was
Easy.
pretty, yeah, organic, like you said, but a lot of planning. It's all sort of like planning, and then obviously it was edited by him. So I think that's the thing people should consider investing the most in is someone who really knows what they're doing when it comes to the video, because it's
Hmm.
the first thing and sometimes the only thing that people watch when they look at a Kickstarter or crowdfunding page.
Sometimes just the first few seconds of the video,
Or that,
and
yeah,
then they just
sometimes.
skip it. Yeah. I really like that the video was really really well done, and even now you can find it in your like about page.
Right.
So I think it really shows some consistency and that you really stood behind your message even after 1 year, 2 years. It's like
Yeah.
it's consistently being supporting your mission, I guess, and still representing. So it's really beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if we move to your your Kickstarter page, so did you have any help there, like to defining products, describing your mission? Um, did you have somebody that would just help you with a mindset on what people expect or what the best practices are, or again, it just happened organically through your, I don't know, intuition, I guess?
Yeah, no, I did. I looked to a lot of people who had done successful campaigns before. There's a lot, especially now, there's a lot of resources and blogs about how to structure the right
Yeah,
levels of rewards, and
price
those are really
points.
smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think being more focused and maybe having less options is better, but I think it works differently for everyone. But I try to see across what worked and what didn't work. And I ended up speaking with someone who actually had a project, a magazine, fail on Kickstarter, and he had a lot of learning, obviously, because his didn't work, so he would have done it differently the second time around. So that was helpful too. Was sort of not just knowing what the best practices are, but what maybe you could have done differently.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, that's what's great about the community now is that people who have had success, or even not, are really open to sharing their practices.
Mm-hmm. How did you prepare for the media impact? Like, how did you do something in like planning of the viral potential, or did you have somebody taking care of your PR and having these contacts with the media? How did you prepare for that aspect of the campaign?
That's the thing that I always say that I would have done better.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I didn't have a clear strategy when I launched it. I kind of had the naive attitude that maybe it would just get picked up by a couple blogs and then it would, blow
Yeah,
up and
by itself.
people
Yeah.
would know about it. Yeah, because you always, it's like you hear a lot of those success stories and the rare projects that hit $1 million in the first 2 days, but those have a lot of sort of strategy and PR put in before they even launch. So I would have done it a lot differently. I didn't have someone doing PR. I didn't have I didn't have a very long list of blogs and people that I wanted to know about it until the day of, so it had already launched. And
Oh wow. Yeah.
I think the thing that's most important to think about, thinking of the strategy of communication and promotion, is thinking about how you keep it alive in the middle, because throughout every project there's always a plateau, there's always a point where it slows down, and that's right when you need to really
Inject.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly how you're gonna get people to keep hearing about it and active on it, because a lot of people do procrastinate, and they wait until the last 24 hours to chip in.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't, you need to build a momentum the whole time. So, yeah,
Thank you. That was awesome.
yeah.
And did you leverage any of your contributors? Like, did you contact them? Did you ask them to help you with spreading the message? Was there any communication between you and the first contributors, or when the project was looking like getting funded? Did you leverage that, or you just left it to organically spill out into social media, for example, or some other media?
No, I did, and that was. I mean, I did use social media even before to sort of get to know who the people that I would be reaching would be, and ask them questions about how to best provide, the messaging that I was providing. But one of the things I learned quickly, I didn't think it was such a big deal or so important, was making sure to send email updates to all the people who had contributed. So,
Mm-hmm.
I've supported a lot of Kickstarter projects, and I'm always surprised when I don't hear anything from the person, even a thank you, until the very end. It's nice to keep people informed of where you're at. Not every day. They don't need to know how many more backers you have or what article you've been put in, but it is important to make sure that they know that you appreciate them, and that give them to support and share the campaign and spread the word, even if it's writing out tweets and posts for them to get started. I mean, people are
Sure.
always,
Yeah.
if they were excited enough to support you and give you a pledge, then they'd probably be willing to share it with their network.
Mhm.
So
Did you stay in contact with them afterwards, like when this was funded and then you moved into production of the magazine? Was there any communication? Like, did you succeed to fulfill your like obligations and deadlines, or was there any shift there? Was there any like unexpected event that would need another sorry, or another sorry, we're being late for a month or something? Because in many like more complex, maybe product based campaigns, a lot of time happens that fulfillment has an issue, or a company in China was late or whatever, and so this communication that starts immediately after launching campaign is really essential to be really transparent with your backers and to let them know
Yeah.
what's actually happening, to let them in the process. And the projects we found that really did well, these communications, they didn't lose almost none of the backers while they were being late or when they were facing something like that. So in your case, did it went smoothly, or you needed to communicate to them some changes, or?
I think I was maybe a month or two behind. It could have been a bit more than that, but I was very vocal through all of that and just making sure that people knew what was going on. And I think, if you're a part of it early on, you want to know, and you get excited by seeing the behind the scenes and just knowing what the story is. So as opposed to just kind of one day getting a product or getting something. But like I said before, I definitely use the network of the campaign to learn and ask questions and get submissions for articles. So I was constantly sort of making sure that the people knew that it was a two-way conversation.
Beautiful.
And it wasn't me. So.
Yeah, and I feel it's like an important aspect of crowdfunding, that you as a backer, you feel the birth of this product. So. Right. You know what went wrong, and you still want to be there, and so it's really different experience than to just get a magazine in a coffee shop or something. Beautiful.
Right, because if I really wanted to do it, and I knew what I wanted to do, I could have just gone to
directly to production
or to advertisers and then presented it. But I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just my voice and wasn't just my product. So
wise move, isn't it? Yeah, not to
launch. For me, it worked.
Yeah, beautiful. If you would start this campaign again, what would you keep and what would you change? Is there something? Maybe there will be some listeners thinking about similar thing, like a magazine or something like that. So, what would you advise? You already mentioned that you would do some parts differently. So what would you definitely keep or improve, and what would you really change, and where would you advise more care and attention to be put in?
Yeah, I definitely. So I think one thing that I see a lot of is sort of setting the goal, and I was very realistic about how much it was going to cost, and at least to do one issue. I didn't consider the longer term business or other kind of personal expenses. But I think that being realistic about what I was creating and how much it was going to cost, I would stay the same. If I knew that there was going to be so much interest, obviously I would have put a bigger goal up. But who knows whether or not that would have made it. So I'm satisfied with that. I would have definitely changed the strategy of communication and press, getting attention before the campaign even started. I had Instagram and Twitter and Facebook up, so people knew that there was something coming. But there could have been a lot more effort before. Mm-hmm. And I think I probably could have thought a bit more about the rewards and sort of what was being given back. There was definitely interest in what I had for promotional things, but I think it probably could have provided something more meaningful or more interesting, I guess. But other than that, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit shorter. The 30 days is pretty standard, but if I would have had a shorter time, I probably would have pushed myself to to get it done faster. And uh, yeah, it was a long 30 days.
Yeah. Everybody's saying this, that it's really intense and long period. Um, for the people who are thinking also about maybe launching a magazine or similar, is there something else you want to tell them? Because maybe they're thinking, should we go, crowdfunding? Should we go? Because it takes a lot of time in preparation also, and also to creating a beautiful video and stuff. So they're thinking about just doing it conventionally or really going the crowdfunding ways. So could you, in your mind, like what the difference is, and would you really encourage them to test it out? Because it's also a proof of concept, I guess, of a magazine.
Sure.
So it helps on many levels, not just funding. But
Yeah.
in your mind, would you advise to really try crowdfunding to test the idea, to get the first backers, and get the question out there to see if there's any interest? Yeah,
Yeah, I would. I think it's important to be a little bit more experimental and transparent about creating something new. Uh, if you're not open to, or that you don't deal well with feedback, then maybe just create a network of community, a network of people in your community around you that can give you great feedback. But when you open it up to a platform like this, you sort of are asking for it from all directions. So. Yeah, I would say, for what I was doing, especially creating something that was more open source for its content, it was pretty important that it was a
yeah,
concept for,
proven.
yeah.
How was it emotionally? I mean, it's pretty intimate thing you are like expressing and putting out there. Was it really challenging to actually see your idea? To put this baby out there and to just wait what people would say, or what kind of mess might happen around this or whatever. How was, emotionally speaking, like when you were approaching the date of the launch? Was it easy? Was it really challenging? Did you have any second thoughts? How that went?
Yeah, it was actually very emotionally exhausting throughout the whole thing. I mean, launching it, though, it was exciting. I was working on it for so long, and I really wanted to get it out there and start to see what people had to say. And then, once it's out there and it gets a little attention the first few days, and then it starts to
Yeah,
slow down. That's when you really start to doubt yourself and worry that maybe your goal was too high, or all the things that go through your mind. But you obviously got this far, and you put it up, and you put a lot of effort into creating the message that you're sharing. That you have to obviously push through that doubt and make sure that you're
to
still
just
giving it
yeah.
everything, and being really positive about it. But yeah, emotionally, it was a very draining 30 days, ups
Yeah.
and downs every day.
So this is where you can help yourself with planning for this, second phase where everything kind of, well, nobody clicks and it just doesn't get. So to really plan these downs with something that you can do with the media, or just to get more attention, maybe periodically each 3 days with the different media, so that you kind of plan for these things, so you're not kind of left alone waiting there
Right.
and doubting.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that, Tim.
Yeah.
Okay, I have finished with my questions. Is there something else you want to share? I feel like it's really an interesting project you did, and it might kind of help someone who is thinking about the idea, to really decide to go for it. And especially, I think, because it's more a personal project, that many
Right.
people are having these ideas, but they kind of cannot break out or cannot make this step when they expose it and make sure the message is being told really like well and with those authenticity. And so I think it's a lot of, I have personally a lot of friends who are thinking about this, but it's easier if you have a product, because you kind of hide behind the form, and you hide behind of usability and technical stuff. But if you're really speaking about more intimate things, I feel the exposure gets much more to the core of your being, I guess, or yourself.
Yeah.
So
No, I agree, and I think once if especially if it's just you creating it, or even a small team creating it, to build something like a crowdfunding project where you can build momentum in people starting to fund it and grab onto the idea. If you've done a great job in how you're communicating it and how it's going to be created specifically for them, and that they're ultimately just as much a part of the business as you are, even though they're not getting a stake in the profit sharing, I guess, they're still a part of the creation of it, and empowering them and really motivate, that really motivates you to make it as best as you can, because it's not just you anymore, it's this whole crowd of people who really believe in you and will give you a pledge to support you. So I think it's hugely beneficial to any creative idea that you aren't sure of.
So maybe we can also mention another thing. We have this opportunity because you are 2 years after the campaign, and so you've created a business around from this campaign. So looking back, how did this campaign also touch your business development aspect? Like, did you get a really quality feedback, so it helped you to expand your idea or redefine it in a way, or it really helped you to get business contacts easier, because you could show something to the business community and leverage that, or maybe in another way, or maybe just as you said, because you're not alone anymore, you have this obligation, and you just get kind of maybe obligation where or maybe motivation that you really continue and make sure the next issue is going to be even bigger, even more interesting. So in these 2 years, how did this impact your business development?
I don't think my network would be quite as big without the initial quick expansion of the community through Kickstarter. So a lot of the people I'm still working with discovered the magazine through the crowdfunding campaign. And yeah, also early on, I think because the idea was presented in a way that was mostly just a mission statement and a sort of brand attribute list. So it was this sort of loosely formed concept. There was so much great feedback that really helped me redirect and reshape the direction. My thinking and my strategy was still very concrete, but being able to expand and maybe move away from one certain idea because it didn't get enough attention or didn't get good feedback, and really listening to what was being said was hugely important before anything was actually printed or before I put any investment into making something. I felt like I had really good organic feedback, to get started with.
Okay, Ryan, I would like to thank you for what you have shared.
Of course.
We really liked your project. It's very different to what we were addressing in the previous interviews. It's much more personal. And the fact that the product is kind of tangible, but the core of the product is not technical. It's not
Right.
usability or something. It was really wonderful, and I think you're one of the new kind of entrepreneurs, or this new generation of young people that are really asking the right questions. Like, they approach life with new questions, so that we each can hold them and find maybe different answers, and just surprise ourselves with the new answers. I think it's a very nice way to approach market, and it just contributes a real tangible quality, I think. Although
I appreciate.
although there is it's not a new bike, or it's not a new gadget or something. Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.